Order. End of question time. The clerk will now proceed to read the orders of the day.
The Guns, Explosives and Weapons Control Bill.
The question is that the bill be now read a second time. Mr. Melvin Yong.
Mr. Speaker, I stand in support of the Guns, Explosive and Weapons Control Bill, which seeks to review and strengthen our existing regulatory regime governing weapons and firearms to keep pace with the security risks posed by new technologies. Mr. Speaker, one of the key provisions of this bill is to outlaw the unauthorized possession of any digital blueprint for the manufacture of a gun or a major part of a gun, to mitigate the threat posed by illegal manufacturing of guns with 3D printing technology. This is a timely move given the increasing rate of technological advancement in additive manufacturing. But in addition to criminalizing the unauthorized possession of digital blueprints for guns, we would also need to proactively cut off the source where such blueprints get downloaded. I'd like to ask how the ministry plans to tackle the issue of criminals downloading digital gun blueprints from the internet, in particular the dark web. I would also like to ask if there would be any circumstances that a person or an organization would be authorized to possess a 3D blueprint of a gun, and what would be the obligations placed on such a person or organization to ensure that there are proper safeguards to prevent misuse of such blueprints. Mr. Speaker, much like trying to stem the influx of pornographic and terrorist-related propaganda on the internet, I foresee that it would be nearly impossible for us to fully cut off access to digital blueprints of guns online. I would therefore urge that we start to think about how we should regulate specific types of 3D printers that are able to manufacture these guns. As the Executive Secretary of the United Workers of Electronics and Electrical Industries, I have seen firsthand how 3D printers have become more versatile today and are now able to print different materials, alloys, and even carbon fiber. There are several types of 3D printers currently available on the market, catering to a wide range of customers, from action figures enthusiasts to startups doing rapid prototyping to aeroplane manufacturers. These 3D printers can use a wide variety of raw ingredients, from plastics to metal to carbon fiber. Perhaps the ministry could consider imposing a licensing requirement on those who import industrial-grade 3D printers, such as such devices have the potential to 3D print a fully functioning gun. Examples would include the stereolithography printer, the direct metal laser sintering printer, and the electron beam melting printer, as some examples. Mr. Speaker, the bill's proposal to criminalize the act of loading drones and other unmanned aerial vehicles with weapons and explosives is both timely and crucial. As the MOS mentioned in his speech yesterday, drones loaded with weapons can pose a serious threat to safety and security. As early as 2015, there were news reports of a teenager in the United States who had already figured out a way to mount a handgun onto a drone and fire it remotely. To make things more worrying, instructional videos on how to do this, which is to replicate this remote firing process, can easily be found online. As technology progresses and the effective range for drones increases exponentially, it is likely that drones can be controlled beyond an operator's visual line of sight, and foreign sources can use their drones to enter our airspace with malicious intent. I'd like to ask the MOS, what will be our defenses and countermeasures against such drone attacks? In particular, if the drone is operated remotely by an operator based outside of Singapore, are there plans to develop our own anti-drone radar and jamming systems? Many members of this House would recall the drone disruptions that happened at Changi Airport in June 2019, which shows that malicious actors need not necessarily load a drone with a weapon to cause damage in Singapore. The drone itself can be the weapon. Mr. Speaker, another key provision of the bill is to allow for the outsourcing of compliance checks for low-risk guns, explosives, and weapons. According to the MOS, this is to allow our licensing officers to focus their attentions on high-risk GEWs. While I can understand the intent and need to optimize our resources, we must ensure that the third parties that are contracted are able to maintain the high standards of the MHA and the SPF. I would therefore like to ask what will be the training, if any, that will be provided to these third-party licensing officers? What are the standards that will be imposed on them? And how does the ministry intend to ensure that they adhere to these standards? Mr. Speaker, as we review our existing regulatory regime governing weapons and firearms, we need to also bear in mind that there exists a small but sizable number of replica gun hobbyists in Singapore who have an interest in collecting gun replicas. While gun replicas are harmless on its own, the high resemblance to real guns can cause a lot of undue fear and alarm, especially to vulnerable people such as the elderly and children. Many replica gun hobbies are deeply private and most pursue their passion quietly. However, just as 3D printing technology gives criminals the ability to produce their own guns, it would also allow these hobbies to 3D print their own gun replicas. I'd like to ask if the bill would criminalize the possession of digital blueprint for gun replicas, such as BB guns and water BB guns. Are there any plans to engage gun replica hobbyists so that we can allow them some flexibility in pursuing their passion within a safeguarded space, perhaps through a proper licensing framework? To conclude, Mr. Speaker, the introduction of the bill is timely as it will allow our enforcement agencies to keep pace with criminals seeking to use these new technologies to commit crime and perform acts of terror in Singapore. While it is important to ban the unauthorized possession of 3D gun blueprints, we need to also prevent the downloading of these blueprints on the dark web and regulate specific 3D printers that can use these blueprints to produce a functional gun. As we move into the new decade, drones and other unmanned aerial vehicles will increasingly become a security threat, and we will need to step up on our anti-drone capabilities. I also hope that the ministry could do more to engage hobbyists who often keep their hobbies in the dark for fear of running afoul of the law, as they too can use the same additive manufacturing technology to 3D print replica guns and even functional ones. With that, I support the bill.